Hey guys, it's NerdGasm. Growing up, I was a die-hard fan of professional wrestling. I couldn't get enough of it. The larger-than-life personalities, the amazing feats of athleticism, the theatrical storytelling elements, both in the ring and outside of it. All of it came together and spoke to me in a way nothing else really did. I think for a lot of fans, video games have always played a big role in our enjoyment of wrestling. New titles usually find themselves on store shelves on a yearly basis, and each one becomes a nostalgic time capsule of sorts, reflecting the current state of the product in that given year. And whether or not the pro wrestling you are watching on TV is delivering for one reason or another, thankfully video games have always been there to fall back on. We've always been able to make our own storylines and have our very own 5-star matches to undo any wrongdoings or disappointments we may face watching the real thing. Over the years, I have collected many wrestling games. Some I grew up playing extensively, whereas others I exposed myself to and experienced for the very first time decades after their initial release. For quite a while now, I've wanted to shed light on these titles, both the good and the bad, provide my own personal retrospectives on them, discussing their origins, gameplay, graphics, various match types, then current rosters, and where applicable, extensive looks at their season modes, giving you a sample size, going through the month-to-month storylines I experienced playing through them. I won't be covering every single wrestling game ever released, but the ones I feel the need to talk about, and most of them will be the ones based on the major wrestling promotions. I think I will be working my way through them chronologically, for the most part, with a few exceptions here and there. The first stop in our pro wrestling game journey is WWF Superstars from 1989, released exclusively on the arcades. It was developed by Technos Japan, and I'm assuming it takes its name or is at least partly inspired by the television program Superstars of Wrestling that had just started airing a few years prior. WWF Superstars was an arcade exclusive because our wonderful friends at Acclaim Entertainment held the rights to all WWF games on home consoles at the time, something they would somehow manage to maintain all the way up until 1999, despite the varying quality of said games. Anywho, because the only way to play WWF Superstars physically is with an arcade cabinet, I have been forced to emulate it in order to make this video. WWF Superstars has you choose 2 wrestlers from a selection of 6 to form a tag team. You've got Hulk Hogan, Ultimate Warrior, Randy Macho Man Savage, Hacksaw Jim Duggan, Big Boss Man, and the Honky Tonk Man. It's a pretty solid combination of main event and mid-card level guys. After selecting your team, you compete in a series of matches in New York City and then Tokyo, Japan, attempting to win the WWF tag titles from the current champions, the Megabucks, Ted DiBiase, and Andre the Giant. Being that this is an arcade game, WWF Superstars has a very straightforward control scheme. You've only got 2 buttons, one that punches and one that kicks. Pressing both of them together allows you to run, and collar and elbow tie-ups are performed automatically when you are close to your opponent. When this happens, you mash the punch or kick button along with a direction to do an Irish whip or unique grapple moves associated with your wrestler, like a body slam, suplex, backbreaker, or pile driver. Some signature moves are in this game too, like Hogan's leg drop, Honky Tonk Man's shake, rattle, and roll neckbreaker, Big Boss Man's Boss Man Slam, Ultimate Warrior's Gorilla Press, and Macho Man's Diving Elbow. When your opponent is on the rebound from an Irish whip, you can backdrop them or run and clothesline them. It's kind of fun to experiment different timings with your moves. You can fight outside the ring if you or your opponent are thrown out of it, which does extra damage, and there are weapons that can be found like a table, which looks like one catering would use. I love how it breaks apart multiple times with each landed strike. You have until the count of 20 to return to the ring before you get counted out and lose the match. A referee can be seen moving around the ring and physically counts each pinfall attempt, which is a nice addition. When you are pinned, you can control your partner to break it up so the match can continue, and it goes without saying that when the wrestler you are playing as is low on health, you'll want to make sure you tag out and get the fresh man in. If your wrestler is at critical health in danger of being pinned, you can power up and refill it, which back in the day would have been done by putting another quarter in the arcade machine. But using an emulator, you can just spam that function with a quick press of a button. It does make the game easier, not to mention a lot more forgiving on the wallet. But honestly, I just find it makes the matches longer and more epic, because you can keep them going, and the AI in this game is no slouch. The matches can become intense, back and forth affairs. The final showdown with Ted DiBiase and Andre the Giant in Tokyo for the tag titles is the most challenging. Andre especially is a pain because of his immense size. He does a lot of damage, and most of your grapple moves won't work against him because your wrestler is unable to lift him, though occasionally they will get him up off the ground, visibly struggling to do so before slamming him into the mat. It adds a nice bit of realism. Graphically, I love the look of WWF Superstars. It's simple, but very colorful, vibrant, and the wrestlers themselves have exaggerated muscles, reminding me a lot of those early rubber figurines. The crowd has some movement to them. You've got the giant WWF logo in the center of the canvas, the classic red, white, and blue ring ropes, and I love the match graphic in the crowd too, showing you who's scheduled in the current matchup. There are a few cutscenes with voiceovers depicting promos with Andre the Giant, Ted DiBiase, and Virgil talking with Mean Gene, but the wrestlers aren't the ones doing the voiceover, just some of the developers at Technos Japan, I think. Kind of a letdown, but then again, what do you expect from a game like this that's this old? WWF Superstars would get a sequel 2 years later called WrestleFest, once again developed by Technos Japan and released exclusively for arcades. To steal the tagline from WrestleMania 3, it was made bigger, better, and badder. Not only was the game graphically superior to its predecessor, but it offered more wrestlers, more modes, and a wider variety of grapple moves and tag team attacks. Just like WWF Superstars, WrestleFest uses a 2-button system where you can punch, kick, and perform wrestling holds by pressing one of those 2 buttons along with a direction on the joystick. The gameplay is basically identical to that of WWF Superstars, but like I mentioned, there are more moves at your disposal this time around. Every wrestler in the game feels more unique, with a moveset that is tailored to their character. I find grapples are a lot easier to pull off in WrestleFest than they were in Superstars, and the signature move system feels far more simplified. In order to land one, all you need to do is get in the right position when your opponent's health is low enough. A good indicator of this is when they are more diagonal when lying on the mat, or holding their ribs when walking around. When you're near your opponent's legs and you press both the punch and kick button, you can also perform submissions, which adds another win condition to matches. In WrestleFest, there are 10 wrestlers on the roster, 4 more than in the previous game. You've got Hulk Hogan, Ultimate Warrior, Mr. Perfect, Ted DiBiase, Big Boss Man, Jake the Snake Roberts, Earthquake, Sergeant Slaughter, and the second incarnation of Demolition, Smash and Crush. The roster is larger and features some new faces, but the absence of Randy Savage in this one kind of sucks, and the inclusion of Ravishing Rick Rude would have been the icing on the cake, though he had left the company the year prior to the game's release due to disputes he was having with WWF owner Vince McMahon, so it makes sense why he wasn't included. WrestleFest has you play one of 2 modes, Royal Rumble, which is a giant battle royal featuring all the wrestlers in the game. new entrants come out when those in the ring get eliminated, which in this game is done by not only getting thrown over the top rope, but also by pinfall and submission. Whenever a new entrant is making their way to the ring, we get to see them mug for the camera first, before turning and running down the aisle, which is a neat perspective. The other mode is Saturday night's main event, which plays out the exact same as WWF Superstars, where you choose 2 wrestlers, form a tag team, and compete in a series of matches to claim the WWF Tag Team titles. In this game, the boss characters, the champions, are Hawk and Animal, the Legion of Doom. Just like in Superstars, you can be thrown outside of the ring during matches, which does increase damage. The camera angle changes. You can pick up weapons like the steel steps or an equipment box, and the ringside environment just looks great. The apron, the padded mats around the ring, the crowd, everything. Oh yeah, and what's really fucking sweet is that in some of your tag matches, you will be inside of a steel cage, the classic blue one with the big gaps in it. You can also throw your opponent into the cage using Irish whips, which is not only funny, but extremely satisfying. While I prefer to play WrestleFest over Superstars, the presentation in both of these games is incredible. The stellar visuals are backed up with some really fun gameplay, making them the best representations of the golden era of the WWF in video game form at that time, because most of the other games, especially on home consoles, were downright shit. Some of the elements in them are dated by today's standards, but don't let that prevent you from trying them out. They are a blast to play if you've got some time to kill. I know something I respect about them is their focus on tag team wrestling and the tag team titles. At that point in time, tag stables were commonplace in wrestling, probably at their absolute peak. This has been NerdGasm. I want to thank you very much for watching this video, and I hope you found it entertaining and insightful in some way, even if you aren't a fan of wrestling. If you'd like to support the channel and everything it is that I do, make sure to hit that subscribe button, bell icon for notifications, and become a producer over on patreon.com if you can. I will see you all in the next one. Take care, stay safe, and always stay nerdy.